I still remember the exact moment I first sat behind the wheel of my 2012 Ford Mustang, that deep blue paint gleaming under the dealership lights. 4 years of saving every dollar from my part-time job. $17,000 earned through sweat and sacrifice. In my family, I was always the invisible one, while my younger brother Dylan shined like the Sunday. I never imagined that this car would become the reason my own parents tried to send me to prison. Before I share what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If stories about family betrayal and justice resonate with you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. To understand why my parents were willing to sacrifice me to protect my brother, you first need to know how my family treated me for 28 years. I was born in 1996, in a modest suburban neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. My father, Richard, worked as a manager at an insurance company. My mother, Patricia, handled accounting for a local firm. We lived in a 3-bedroom house with a small backyard, the kind of place where neighbors waved at each other and kids played in the streets until the streetlights came on. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. Everything changed in 2000 when my brother Dylan arrived. He came into this world 2 weeks early, and my parents panicked like the sky was falling. The doctors assured them Dylan was perfectly healthy, just a little impatient to meet the world. But something shifted in my parents that day. Their worry transformed into an obsession with protecting him from every possible harm. I was 4 years old when they moved me out of my bedroom. Dylan needed more space, they explained. My room was bigger, had better lighting, was closer to their bedroom. I spent that night crying in the smaller room at the end of the hallway, wondering what I had done wrong. That was the first time I felt like a stranger in my own home, but it certainly was not the last. Growing up, I worked hard for everything. I brought home straight report cards, hoping to see pride in my parents' eyes. I won second place at the regional science fair in 7th grade and rushed home clutching that ribbon like it was made of gold. My mother glanced at it for half a second before asking if I had picked up Dylan from his playdate. My father did not even look up from his newspaper. I made the varsity basketball team as a sophomore, one of only 3 underclassmen to achieve that honor. The coach called my parents to congratulate them. They forgot to attend my first game because Dylan had a mild cold and needed someone to make him soup. Meanwhile, Dylan could do no wrong. When he broke the neighbor's window with a baseball, my parents laughed and called it a boyish accident. When he failed 3 classes in 8th grade, they blamed the teachers for not understanding his creative spirit. When he crashed his bicycle into my mother's rose garden, destroying plants she had cultivated for years, she simply smiled and said he was just being energetic. The contrast was so stark it became almost comical. I learned to expect nothing and was rarely disappointed. I stopped sharing my achievements because the silence that followed hurt more than any words could. I became a ghost in my own home, passing through rooms unnoticed, eating dinners where conversations revolved entirely around Dylan's day, his friends, his dreams. When I turned 16, I got my first job at a pizza place called Romano's, about 2 miles from our house. I worked the evening shift taking orders, making deliveries, mopping floors after closing. My parents did not object, but they did not show interest either. They never asked how my day went or if the work was too much alongside school. I saved every paycheck. While other kids spent their money on video games and concerts, I watched my bank account grow. I bought my own school supplies, my own clothes, my own first cell phone. There was something empowering about not needing to ask my parents for anything. Every dollar I earned was proof that I could survive without their approval. After high school, I enrolled at Columbus State Community College. I could have applied to bigger universities, but I refused to ask my parents for tuition money. I knew what the answer would be anyway. I worked full-time while taking classes, sometimes running on 4 hours of sleep and 3 cups of coffee. It took me 5 years to finish a 2-year degree, but I did it on my own terms. Dylan, of course, went to a private university. My parents paid his tuition in full, bought him a brand new BMW for his 16th birthday, and gave him a credit card with no spending limit. He majored in business, though I suspect he majored more in partying and skipping classes. But my parents saw only their golden child destined for greatness. The difference in how they treated us became undeniable on certain occasions. My 21st birthday fell on a Tuesday that year. I waited for a call, a card, maybe even a small acknowledgement. Nothing came. 2 days later, my mother sent a text message. "Happy birthday, sweetie. Sorry we forgot. Things have been crazy." That was it. No dinner, no cake, no gift. When Dylan turned 18, my parents threw a party that could rival a small wedding. 50 guests filled our backyard. There was a DJ, a catering service, and a 3-tier cake. At the end of the night, my father handed Dylan the keys to a brand new BMW wrapped in a giant red bow. I watched from the corner of the yard holding a plastic cup of soda, feeling like an uninvited guest at my own brother's celebration. I did not let bitterness consume me. I told myself that their approval was not necessary for my happiness. I focused on my work-earned promotions and built a life that depended on no one but myself. By the time I was 24, I had been working full-time at a logistics company for 6 years. I had a small apartment, a stable income, and $17,000 saved in my bank account. That was when I found the car. A 2012 Ford Mustang, deep blue like the ocean at twilight. The previous owner had taken immaculate care of it. Only 40,000 miles on the odometer, leather interior still supple, and clean engine purring like a satisfied cat. The dealer wanted $18,000, but I negotiated him down to $15,000. I paid in cash, watching his eyes widen as I counted out the bills. The first time I sat in that driver's seat, I felt something I had never experienced before. Pride. Real, genuine pride that came from accomplishment, not from someone else's validation. I gripped the steering wheel and smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. This car represented everything I had worked for, every sacrifice I had made every night. I chose overtime instead of going out with friends. I drove to my parents' house that weekend, foolishly hoping they might share in my joy. I parked the Mustang in their driveway and walked inside with my heart beating fast. My father, Richard, was reading in his armchair. He looked up, glanced out the window at the car, and snorted. "A used car like that, and you are showing it off," he said. His words landed like a punch to the gut. My mother, Patricia, barely looked up from her magazine. She made some non-committal sound and changed the subject to Dylan's upcoming internship interview. I stood there for a moment waiting for something more, then quietly left. I should have known better than to expect anything different. But it was Dylan's reaction that stuck with me. He walked outside to look at the Mustang, circling it slowly, like a predator examining prey. His BMW sat in the garage, shinier and more expensive. Yet he stared at my car with something dark in his eyes. Envy, maybe. Or entitlement. He was not used to me having anything he did not. I drove home that night telling myself it did not matter. I had my car, my apartment, my independence. My family's opinion was irrelevant. But somewhere deep inside, a small part of me still wished things could be different. 3 months passed without incident. I drove my Mustang to work every day, took it on weekend trips to nearby state parks, kept it washed and waxed like it was my most precious possession. Because it was. Then Dylan crashed his BMW. The details came out slowly over the following days. He had been at a party, drank too much, and decided to drive home anyway. Somewhere on Route 33 he lost control and slammed into a concrete pillar. The front end crumpled like aluminum foil. Miraculously, Dylan walked away with only bruises and a cut on his forehead. The car was not so lucky. Insurance refused to cover the damages. Dylan had been driving under the influence, which violated the terms of his policy. The repair estimate came to $14,000, money that Dylan did not have because he spent everything my parents gave him on clothes, restaurants, and weekend trips. My parents, for once, did not immediately bail him out. The economy had been rough on my father's company, and they had already dipped into savings to cover some of Dylan's credit card debts. They told him they would figure something out eventually, but he needed to be patient. Dylan was never good at patience. My phone rang on a Wednesday evening. I saw Dylan's name on the screen and hesitated before answering. We rarely spoke, and when we did it was usually because he wanted something. His voice was unusually sweet when I picked up, almost friendly. "I need a favor," he said. "Can I borrow your car for a few weeks, just until I get my BMW fixed?" I felt my stomach tighten. Lend him my Mustang. The car I had worked 6 years to buy. The car he had looked at with jealousy in his eyes. I told him no. I explained that I needed the car for work, that it was my only transportation, that I could not function without it. I tried to be polite about it, but firm. Dylan's tone changed instantly. The sweetness evaporated like morning dew. "You are so selfish," he spat. "You have a car sitting there, and you will not even help your own brother. What kind of family are you?" I reminded him that he had a brand new BMW while I drove a used Mustang, that our parents had given him everything while I had earned what little I had. He hung up on me before I could finish. That night my mother called. Her voice carried that familiar tone of disappointment that I had heard my entire life. Why would I not help Dylan? He was struggling. He was family. Did I not care about anyone but myself? I tried to explain my position again. The car was my property. I had worked years to buy it. I could not simply hand it over because Dylan had made irresponsible choices. My mother sighed heavily. "You always were the difficult one, Kieran," she said. "Your brother has such a generous heart. I do not know where we went wrong with you." She hung up before I could respond. The next day my father called. His approach was different. No disappointment, no guilt trips. Just commands. "Give Dylan your car," he ordered. That is not a request. Something inside me snapped. 28 years of obedience. 28 years of swallowing my pride and accepting their dismissal. I was done. "I am 28 years old," I said. "The car is mine. I bought it with my own money. I have every right to refuse." Silence stretched across the phone line. When my father spoke again, his voice was ice cold. "If you do not help your brother, you are no longer my son." The words should have devastated me. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. The threat that had always hung over my head had finally been spoken aloud. And I realized it did not scare me anymore. I told him that was his choice to make. Then I ended the call. Over the following days, Dylan bombarded me with text messages. They started as pleading, moved to angry, then became threatening. "You will regret this. You have no idea what I am capable of." I blocked his number after he sent a message saying he would make me pay for humiliating him. I should have taken that threat more seriously. 2 weeks later, on a cold Saturday night in November, I worked the late shift at the warehouse. We had a major shipment going out, and I did not leave until almost 2 in the morning. The drive home was quiet, the streets empty, except for occasional headlights passing in the opposite direction. I pulled into my apartment complex and felt my heart stop. My parking spot was empty. I drove around the lot 3 times, thinking maybe I had forgotten where I parked. But no. The space where I always left my Mustang was vacant. Just oil stains on the concrete where my car should have been. My hands were shaking as I called the police. I reported my vehicle stolen, gave them the license plate number, the VIN, every detail I could remember. They took my information and said they would be in touch. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through possibilities. Who would steal my car? Why? The answer came the next morning when Marcus knocked on my door. Marcus was my neighbor, a retired electrician in his 60s who had lived in the complex for 15 years. He was one of those people who noticed everything, and he had security cameras installed around his unit after some break-ins a few years back. "I think I have something you need to see," he said. He led me to his living room and pulled up footage from his security system. The camera faced the parking lot, and the timestamp showed 11:14 p.m. the previous night. On the screen, I watched a figure approach my Mustang. The person pulled something from their pocket. A key. They unlocked the door, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. When they adjusted the rearview mirror, the light caught their face. Dylan. I watched my brother steal my car with a spare key. The spare key I had left at my parents' house months ago, in a drawer in my old bedroom, never thinking twice about it. I called my parents immediately. My mother answered on the 3rd ring. "Dylan has my car," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I have video proof. He needs to return it right now. Patricia's response chilled me to the bone. Oh, he just borrowed it, she said casually. You were not using it anyway. He will bring it back in a few days. I told her this was theft. I told her I had already filed a police report. I told her Dylan had 24 hours to return my vehicle, or I would press charges. My mother laughed. Actually laughed. You would not dare, she said. He is your brother. I ended the call and stared at my phone. 24 hours. Then I would do what I should have done years ago. I would stop letting my family walk all over me. 20 hours later, I received a call from the Columbus Police Department. My Mustang had been in an accident. I drove to the impound lot in a borrowed car from Marcus. The scene that greeted me there is something I will never forget. My beautiful blue Mustang, the car I had dreamed about for years and saved for even longer, was destroyed. The front end had crumpled against itself like crushed paper. The hood had buckled upward, exposing the mangled engine beneath. Both headlights were shattered, and the windshield had spiderweb cracks spreading across its entire surface. A police officer explained what happened. The vehicle had been traveling at high speed on Interstate 70 when it struck the median barrier. The driver had been intoxicated. Blood alcohol level nearly twice the legal limit. The driver was Dylan. He had been transported to Grant Medical Center with minor injuries. A few cuts, some bruising, a mild concussion. He would recover fully in a few days. I stood there looking at the wreckage of my dreams. 6 years of savings. Countless hours of overtime, all of it reduced to twisted metal and broken glass. I did not cry. I wanted to, but the tears would not come. Instead, I felt something harden inside my chest. A resolve that had been building for 28 years finally solidified into something unbreakable. I told the officer I wanted to press charges. Theft, destruction of property, whatever would stick. He nodded and handed me a card for a detective who would handle the case. Detective Ramirez called me 2 days later. He was a straightforward man with a no-nonsense voice. He had reviewed my report, the video from Marcus, and the incident report from the Highway Patrol. Everything pointed clearly to Dylan. I thought justice was finally coming. 3 days after that conversation, I received another call from Detective Ramirez. He asked me to come to the station to discuss the case. His tone had changed, colder, more formal. When I arrived at the police station, 2 officers met me at the front desk. Before I could say a word, one of them pulled out handcuffs. Kieran Matthews, you are under arrest for filing a false police report and attempted insurance fraud. I could not process what was happening. I asked what they were talking about as they read me my rights and led me to a holding cell. Detective Ramirez visited me an hour later. He sat across from me in an interrogation room, a folder open on the table between us. Your parents came in yesterday, he said. Richard and Patricia Matthews. They provided sworn statements saying that you took your own vehicle that night. They claim you staged the theft to commit insurance fraud and blame your brother for the accident. The room seemed to spin around me. My own parents. They had gone to the police. They had lied under oath. They had accused me of crimes I did not commit. All to protect Dylan. I tried to explain, but Ramirez held up his hand. They say your brother was home all night, he continued. They provided a statement saying Dylan never left their house that Saturday evening. According to them, you have a history of jealousy toward your brother and concocted this scheme to ruin his life. I spent 2 nights in a jail cell. 48 hours of fluorescent lights, hard benches, and the constant noise of other inmates. 2 nights to fully absorb the depth of my parents' betrayal. They had chosen Dylan. They had always chosen Dylan. But this was different. This was not just favoritism or neglect. They were actively trying to destroy my life to save his. On the 3rd day, I was released on bail. Every dollar I had saved after buying the Mustang went toward securing my freedom. I walked out of that jail with empty pockets and a burning determination. I needed a lawyer, a good one. Sandra Hayes came recommended by Marcus, who had used her years ago for a property dispute. She was in her early 50s with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. When I sat in her office and told her my story, she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Your parents made a serious mistake, she said. "Perjury is a felony in Ohio. If we can prove they lied under oath, they face criminal charges." I told her about the video from Marcus. Her eyes lit up. Over the following weeks, Sandra built my case piece by piece. She was methodical, thorough, and relentless. First, the security footage from Marcus. Clear as day, showing Dylan approaching my car at 11:14 p.m., using a key to unlock the door and driving away. His face was visible when he adjusted the mirror. Second, my phone's GPS data. At the time Dylan stole my car, I was clocked in at the warehouse across town. Multiple co-workers confirmed my presence during the entire shift. Third, the text messages. Before I blocked Dylan, he had sent dozens of messages demanding I give him my car. They established clear motive and premeditation. Fourth, the medical report from the hospital. Dylan's blood alcohol content at the time of the accident was 0.15, nearly double the legal limit. Combined with the accident report, it proved he was the one behind the wheel. Fifth, traffic camera footage. Sandra subpoenaed recordings from 3 different cameras along the route from my apartment to the crash site. Each one showed my Mustang with a single occupant. Enhanced images clearly showed Dylan's face. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, irrefutable. My day in court arrived on a gray Thursday morning. The courtroom was larger than I expected, with wooden benches and tall windows letting in pale winter light. Dylan sat at the defendant's table with his attorney, a man who looked increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounted. My parents sat in the gallery behind him, their faces tight with worry. Sandra presented our case with surgical precision. Each piece of evidence built upon the last, constructing an airtight narrative of what really happened. The video played on a large screen. The GPS records were displayed for the jury. The text messages were read aloud. When my parents were called to testify, everything fell apart for them. Richard took the stand first. Under cross-examination, Sandra asked him to explain the video footage. How could Dylan be home all night if cameras showed him stealing my car at 11:14 p.m.? My father stammered. He claimed the video was fabricated. Sandra produced the original security files, with their metadata intact, verified by an independent forensic analyst. Patricia did not fare any better. When confronted with the traffic camera images, she broke down. She admitted they had lied. They had done it to protect Dylan because he was their baby, their special boy, and they could not bear to see him go to prison. The verdict came swiftly. Dylan was found guilty on multiple counts: vehicle theft, driving under the influence, destruction of property. He was sentenced to 18 months in state prison. My parents faced their own judgment, filing false statements under oath, obstruction of justice. Each received 6 months behind bars. I was fully exonerated. All charges against me were dropped and my record was expunged. The court ordered Dylan to pay restitution and insurance covered the rest. $23,000 total, more than the car had been worth. But sitting in that courtroom, watching the bailiff lead my family away in handcuffs, I did not feel victorious. I just felt empty. The weeks after the trial were the hardest of my life. I had won. Justice had been served. My name was cleared. Yet I felt like I had lost everything. I could not sleep most nights. I would lie awake, replaying memories from my childhood, searching for signs I had missed, moments I could have done something differently. The questions tortured me. What had I done to make them love me less? Why was I never enough? My coworkers noticed the change in me. I showed up late, made mistakes I never would have made before, spent lunch breaks sitting alone in my car. A few of them tried to reach out, but I pushed them away. I did not want their pity. It was Marcus who finally broke through. One evening he knocked on my door holding a casserole dish covered in foil. "You look like you have not had a real meal in weeks," he said. And I made too much for myself anyway. We sat at my small kitchen table and ate in silence for a while. Then Marcus started talking about his own life. He told me about his brother who had cheated him out of their inheritance 40 years ago. About parents who had dismissed him as the black sheep while praising his siblings. About the decades he spent trying to earn approval that would never come. "Family is not blood," he said finally. "Family is the people who show up for you when everything falls apart. Blood relatives are just an accident of biology. Real family is a choice." Something about his words cracked the wall I had built around myself. For the first time since the trial, I let myself cry. Marcus did not say anything. He just sat there with me, a steady presence in the wreckage of my world. That conversation became a turning point. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patterson, who specialized in family trauma. Twice a week I sat in her office and unpacked 28 years of neglect and disappointment. It was painful work, like cleaning an infected wound. But slowly I began to heal. I also joined a support group for people from dysfunctional families. Meeting others who understood what I had experienced made me feel less alone. Their stories mirrored mine in countless ways. Different details, same pain. We built each other up, celebrated each other's victories, held space for each other's grief. 6 months after the trial, I received a promotion at work. My supervisor cited my resilience and dedication. The raise allowed me to move into a nicer apartment on the other side of the city, far from the memories that haunted my old neighborhood. With the settlement money, I bought a new car, not another Mustang. That dream had been tainted by everything that happened. Instead, I chose a 2020 Honda Civic. Reliable, practical, and entirely my own. Every time I started the engine, I reminded myself of how far I had come. I never visited my parents or Dylan in prison. They sent letters that I threw away unopened. When they were released, I had already moved to Denver. I changed my phone number, my address, everything. I did not do it out of anger or revenge. I simply chose peace. They had no place in the life I was building. 2 years have passed since then. I am 30 now, working as a logistics manager for a growing company. I have a girlfriend named Emma, who knows my whole story and loves me anyway. I have friends who became the family I chose for myself. Sometimes I think about my parents and Dylan, not with bitterness, but with a kind of distant sadness. They are strangers now, people I used to know. I hope they found whatever they were looking for in each other, since they clearly were not looking for it in me. The biggest lesson I learned through all of this is simple but profound. You cannot force people to value you. You cannot earn love from those who have decided you are unworthy of it. But you can choose to value yourself. You can build a life that does not depend on anyone's approval. You can find people who see you clearly and love what they see. If you are watching this and you come from a family that made you feel invisible, I want you to know something. Their inability to see your worth says everything about them and nothing about you. You do not need their permission to be happy. You do not need their blessing to move on. Sometimes the people who should love us the most are the ones who hurt us the worst. And sometimes walking away is not giving up. It is choosing yourself. It is deciding that your peace matters more than their comfort. I do not know where my parents are now. I do not know if Dylan ever straightened out his life. And honestly, I have stopped caring. My energy goes toward people who deserve it. My love goes to those who return it. My future belongs to me and me alone. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to choose between your peace and your family's expectations? Have you ever walked away from people who refuse to see your worth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story meant something to you, please hit the like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel for more stories about resilience, justice, and finding your way through the darkness. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this community. No matter what you are facing right now, I hope you remember that you deserve better than what hurts you. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.